Hello ladies and gents, so we've been working on Hangman and we've created a few functions for it, and it would be nice to actually get the whole game finished. In order to do that we need to make a few changes to what we've already got and create a few more bits before gluing it all together. I know some of you have had an attempt from what we started with to get everything working. If you have, that's great. Being able to go through and solve these problems yourself is an excellent skill. If you're not quite there yet, then we'll go through, break down the problem, try and put the component parts together and make a decent program. So first we can look at what we've already created. So we've already created an is in word, so a function which just checks is this letter in this word. For example, if your secret word was secret and you guess a C, is this C in secret true or false? We then had getLetter, and that's a nice function which is just asking the user to pick a letter, and it's checking it's a single letter, it's checking it's a sensible letter, and it's doing all those checks, so we don't have to worry about whether it's actually a proper letter. It's all done within this one function. We've then got checkLetter, and all that's doing is it's taking a letter, doing an arbitrary check on it and putting it into a good pile or a bad pile. And what we're using that good and bad pile for is for correct guesses and incorrect guesses. And we've got print word, which at the moment we're just going through one letter at a time of our secret word and printing out just one character at a time. So we can develop these last two functions into something a bit more useful. The first two function is in word and getLetter are perfect as they are. Okay, so checkLetter. When we done this previously, it was checking it against M, and if it's before M in the alphabet it's good, if it's after M in the alphabet it's bad, or similar. Instead, what we want to be doing is using is in word and only putting it in good word if it's a correct guess, only putting it in bad word if it's an incorrect guess. So to do that we need to make sure that we have the letter and the word coming into this function so we can make a decision based on these. We then have to have good word and bad word so we can add the letter onto the correct one of these strings. And this is as simple as saying, okay, if is in word, is this letter in this word? If it is, then put the letter in good word. If it isn't, put it in bad word. And then because we made changes to these two, we'll want to return them both. So that's a slight change on what we've already created. The second one we need to change is print word. So this was just going over one letter at a time from the word. Instead, we still want to be going over it one letter at a time, but we only want to be printing it if it has already been guessed. And the list of guessed correct letters is good word. So if we give it word and good word, we can go over each individual letter and say, okay, is that letter in good word? Has that letter been guessed already? If it has, fine, print that letter in the correct place. If it hasn't, print an underscore so the user knows that there's a letter in that place that they still need to guess. All this function's doing is printing, so it doesn't need to return anything. Technically that means it's not a function, it's a procedure. Something which you need to know for exams, but it tends not to make a huge amount of difference in the real world. So for your exams, a procedure is a subroutine which does not return anything. Otherwise, if it does return something, it's a function. Okay, so those are the two functions which we've made which need a bit of tweaking. After that, we need to start making a few new functions. We can print the word. It would also be good if we can print how many lives we've got left. So if we create a function called print lives, this will figure out how many lives there are and print that out. Again, that will make it a procedure because we won't be returning anything. We can see, okay, what do we need to have in order to figure out how many lives we've lost? Well, all you really need is the amount of incorrect guesses, which we're storing in bad word. So bad word, if you've made 2 incorrect guesses, will hold 2 letters. So all you really need to do is print the length of bad word. I'd recommend putting some nice wording around it. Say, hey, you've lost so many lives. That's all it really needs to do. Okay, what other functions would be useful? Well, something to check to see if you've won would be good. So if you use getWin, so you need to create a function and it will return true or false, because you've either won or you haven't. That's it. There's no, well, you kind of won. So it's returning true or false. It's a Boolean. And it needs to figure out whether you've won. So what do you need to have in order to figure out if it's a win or not? Well, the only real information you need is the word which you're trying to guess, so the secret word, and all the correct guesses, so all of the good letters which you've guessed. And what you'll need to be doing in here is looping over word, going over each individual letter, and saying, okay, is this letter in good word? Okay, is the next letter in good word? If they're all correct, then you know that you've won. Otherwise, it's false. We've done various similar programs. Hopefully you can get to grips with how that's working. So it only requires 1 failure for it to be false, whereas if it's true, they all have to be true. Okay, what else? So if we got getWin, then surely getLoss. So again, we're just returning true or false. And instead of having to go through the word, all we really need to do is say, okay, how many incorrect guesses have we got? And that will just say, okay, you've got more than however many guesses wrong, therefore this is a loss. And again, returning just true or false, whether you've lost or not. Okay, so what do we have? Well, we've got all these functions which we've created. We've got isInWord, we've got getLetter, we've got checkLetter, printWord, printLives. If you want to be fancy with printLives, you can have it doing pictures of a hangman and other various stages. That's up to you if you've got everything working. If you haven't got anything working, I'd focus just printing the number of lives lost rather than trying to do graphical just yet. We then got getWin and getLoss. Okay, can we reshuffle these a bit? Okay, this is exactly the same group of boxes, but we've just moved them around a bit. So we can do, I've kind of tried to put them in order. So you can get a letter, you can then check the letter, you can then print the word, and you can print the lives. That seems like a complete turn. When you check letter, you'll be using isInWord. It almost seems like we have to do all that as a turn and then check whether there's a win or a loss. Then you do another turn, check if there's a win or a loss. Now we can actually do this in diagram form, like that. This is actually called a structure chart. We look more at it in A-level and creating your own, but this shows us that the game is constructed of a turn and a check of win and loss. This isn't all of the code which will be in it, but this is showing what functions will be called within the game subroutine. It's then showing that a turn subroutine is each of these in turn, showing that the check letter calls isInWord. So we can join all these together into a subroutine called turn. So it will go through each of those 4 steps, and that will just let a user take its turn. The information it needs in order to do that, well, it needs the secret word, so secret or whatever the word that the user is trying to guess is. it needs the list of good guesses so far, and it needs the list of bad guesses so far. And then once it's done a complete turn, it will just return the list of good and the list of bad guesses. So after a complete turn, all you really need to remember is it's got these letters right and these letters wrong. We can then join this up even more if we just quickly go back here. If we got this working, we can then join this up to get win and get loss to make the game. So that's stringing together multiple terms. So this is where we're starting to get a loop in, and you'll just be running over turn again and again until a win or a loss. Now the only information you need coming into this function is the word. It can create the list of good letters, successful guesses, and the list of unsuccessful guesses. It can create those as empty, because when you start a game, you've made no guesses, correct or incorrect. And then throughout the process of this program, of this subroutine, it will be calling turn, which will be updating that list of correct and incorrect guesses. And it will keep going and looping over that until there's a win or a loss. Then once it's finished, it just needs to return true if it's a win or false if it's a loss. There's no other way out of Hangman. You either win or you die trying. So if you've got that working, then all you need is the line game secret, and that will run an entire game of Hangman. It's very important you develop each of these chunks individually in turn. Go through the steps, go through the instructions, create each of them, get them working on their own. On the worksheets I've given you, I've got a bit of an explanation on each of them and some code on how to run them. It's important you get them running and working on their own before you try to stitch them all together. If you try to stitch everything together when you don't have the component parts working, the whole thing will just fall apart. But once you've got each of these 5 functions working, get it working on a turn, and you should be able to do a single turn of the game. Once you've got a single turn working, then you should be able to string it together and do multiple turns. So it's all about building it up bit by bit in order to create a complete project. Hopefully that helps. Best of luck with it. Let me know if you have any questions, but see if you can get Hangman working completely. Thank you.